Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we dive into the deeply emotional journey of a woman who had built her world on a foundation of lies, moving through life in a way that kept her shielded from truth but also trapped in her own carefully crafted illusions. Her days were marked by pretenses and masks, pretending to be what others expected while hiding her real struggles. She believed this was the only way to survive, until a chance encounter with a man would change the course of her life completely, guiding her towards something more honest, more fulfilling, and far more beautiful than she had ever imagined. From the outside, her life looked polished. She lived in a place that seemed almost designed to impress: grand architecture, clean streets, and a social circle that admired her for what they thought she was. The exterior of her world sparkled with perfection, from the neatly kept gardens to the perfectly chosen outfits she wore every time she stepped out. People saw confidence and poise, a woman who had everything under control. What they could never guess was that beneath that perfect image, she was exhausted from keeping up the act, constantly worried that one wrong step would expose the truth she worked so hard to hide. The interior of her life, however, told another story. Behind closed doors, she lived with the constant weight of fear and the loneliness that comes from not letting anyone in. The rooms of her home were beautifully furnished, but they felt cold because they were more for show than for comfort. Every detail was staged, and there was no space that truly felt like her own. Her emotional performance was flawless. She had mastered the art of saying the right things, smiling at the right moments, and keeping her voice steady even when her heart raced. She could win over strangers and maintain relationships without ever revealing who she really was. But over time, this performance became draining. She realized that while she had convinced everyone else, she could not convince herself that this was truly the life she wanted. The walls she had built to protect herself were becoming her prison. The turning point came when she met a man whose way of living was completely different. He was straightforward, calm, and unafraid of being seen for who he really was. He noticed her not just for her beauty or charm, but for the small cracks in her facade, the moments when her eyes seemed tired or her voice trembled. Unlike others, he didn't accept her polished answers at face value. Instead, he asked questions that made her pause, and he listened without judgment. His presence was a form of safety she had never known. Slowly, she began to let her guard down. This was her safety feature in human form, someone who could hold her story without using it against her, someone who offered understanding instead of criticism. He showed her that life didn't have to be about impressing others or maintaining control over every detail. There was freedom in being genuine, even if it meant showing vulnerability. What made this transformation unique was not just his influence but the way he encouraged her to take the steps herself. He didn't force her to change, instead, he showed her the possibilities that came with honesty. She learned how to rebuild her life, piece by piece, without relying on the deceptions that had once been her only shield. Her days started to feel lighter, her laughter became unrestrained, and her home finally reflected warmth instead of pretense. The value of this change could not be measured in money alone, but if it had a price, it was the willingness to give up the false security of lies in exchange for the uncertain but rewarding path of truth. That price was steep at first, risking relationships built on illusions, facing uncomfortable realities, and confronting her own fears. But the return on this investment was immeasurable: peace of mind, authentic connections, and a sense of self she had never truly known. By the end of her journey, the woman who once lived a life of deception had transformed into someone entirely different. She no longer needed to hide behind an image. Her story became an example of how change is possible when courage meets the right kind of guidance. The man who had shown her the better path didn't just offer her an escape from her old life, he helped her discover a life worth living.